Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Rules of Engagement. We just went over a Zerg vs. Terran replay that was submitted by the Zerg. We talked about how to leverage your military advantage, how to split up your army and really defend basically all parts of your map by using your units very, very efficiently. Now we're going to get on to a PvP that was sent to me by Saded about how to deal with Phoenix play when you're doing that Robo expansion. So he's saying, I'm wondering whether or not my response is a proper response to a Stargate opening once you've already chosen to Immortal expand. How can I attempt to punish a Stargate opening using a Robo opening? How to improve my micro during large PvP engagements. So the three things we're really going to take out of this and examine are going to be, we want to basically go over all the different ways you can play a Robo expand versus Protoss. Then we want to look at the mid-game macro decisions and how to improve those. And then finally, the late-game engagements and how to control those better. And also, when you should be looking for a late-game engagement. So let's jump right into the replay right here. And first thing we're going to talk about is how to streamline the opening a little bit more. So we're going to look from the side of the blue player, the good guy. This is at a point when he's already seen the Phoenixes, okay? And his observer is crossing the map. The Phoenixes ran by his base. As soon as he saw Phoenix play, he responded by building a Twilight Council and starting to warp in Stalkers. Of course, Robo expand, you always open with just Zealots, Sentries, and maybe one Stalker, but you don't want to get a lot of Stalkers by default. He added these in response to Phoenix and started taking Blink. So the first thing to note here is that you didn't actually do a streamlined Robo expansion build, and one of the big keys there is he got the Mortal before the Observer, which you never want to do unless you're being pressured early. You should, by the time your Robotics finishes, you should know if you're being 4-gated or not. And if you are being 4-gated, you Chrono Boost out that Immortal. If you're not being 4-gated, you always get the Observer first, and that does two things. One, you scout your opponent faster, which is nice, obviously. A faster scout is better. And then two, more importantly, is that money you spent on the Mortal, that can go to a Nexus. When you get the Nexus a lot earlier, it opens up a lot more options. In the very worst case, they're doing a delayed 4-gate. And if they do a delayed 4-gate, you can just cancel the Nexus. You lose 100 minerals, but I mean, you're still going to be way ahead because you have Robotech. You can hold your ramp with force fields. You're not really in a big problem or not. Some people have a little bit of a tricky time holding War Prism 4-gate, but you should still be able to hold it, and that's something to practice if you have a hard time against it. Practice holding it with that fast Nexus. So the first thing to say is you didn't really do a Robo expand as streamlined as it could be. So that's one thing to work on. Then we're going to talk about potential responses. So this response is going to be, we're actually just going to play this out as we talk about it. Is going to be basically going into Blink Stalker Observer off one base after opening Robo. So it's slightly less efficient than the straight Blink Stalker Observer, and the reason why is because the Blink is going to be substantially later. But even though it's less efficient, if the Phoenix player tries to expand like this, which is what you're seeing they're doing, if they expand like that, you should just go and kill them. You should not be building probes here. If you're on one base and you already have 34 probes, that's plenty. You should either be expanding or you should be building units. Those are only two options. So building probes is a little bit incorrect as a reaction. Unless you build the expansion, then once you start the Nexus, then you start cranking out probes again. Just staying on one base, either build units and go attack the opponent and kill them, which you could easily do. I mean, just Sentries and Zealots. Of course, he's getting Robotics now, but with the rate he expanded, there's no way he could hold a 4-gate Blink. If you do a one-base 4-gate Blink and he went Phoenix and expansion. Typically, Phoenix... If they go Phoenix, they should have to expand after you do to be safe, or else they're very vulnerable to attacks. Of course, here your units could have been positioned a little bit nicer there, and the Observer is not necessary to have with the army. You'd rather have that Observer on their army in front of your base. You really want to know exactly kind of what they're doing, and you know they don't have an Observer quite this early in the game, so you don't have to worry about losing it that fast. So there's a couple of more efficiencies there, as far as faster expansion probably. Or faster expansion or going to kill your opponent. So you're already falling behind just a little bit. You're not falling behind by too much because you still have a small Harvester lead, but the Harvester lead should go away because you're layered in Nexus, so it should pretty much equalize out. Two base plays, if you want to do some Charge at Archon timing, those can often work, but I mean, you can just play fine. If you like to play a defensive macro game, stick with it. There's nothing wrong. Basically, there's nothing wrong with this approach to Phoenix's defensive Blink Stalker expansion, except the expansion was way too late. That was the only thing that was wrong with it. The general idea is totally fine. So now we're going to get into the mid-game macro. Let's fast forward a bit till we get to the mid-game. Both players just standardly macroing up, nothing too much going on here. You're going to want to go to Colossi eventually. So I liked getting that robotic support bay because you've seen, unless your opponent continues to mass a ton of Phoenix, which you've noticed that that's not true because it's only 4 and 4, and your observer ideally would be poking their base to see what they're doing. Unless they're continuing to mass tons of Phoenix, going for Colossi is always the right pretty much always the right answer in PvP. So I like the Colossus play. The one thing I don't like so much about this, I think getting charge here is a bit early. Charge is not super important in PvP. You'd rather get more Colossi or Archons, and then you want to get charged once you get a substantial number of Zealots. But right now, you're only on 2 Warp Gates. You're not going to have a ton of Zealots. So charge is a little bit overeager. The next thing is I'm going to slow the replay down here. There's a ton of cannons being built. So we've already established that the opponent is not massing Phoenix. So getting 4 cannons in your main, actually 5 cannons in the main, and then how many is in the natural? And then another 5 in the natural is extreme overkill. You want to put the cannons at the angle the Phoenix will come in at, so you can put like 1 here and 1 here, and that'll be 2 in your main is fine. And then your natural you could put 1. These 2 are good. Having 3 cannons here is pointless. For Phoenixes to get to this part of natural, they have to go through your base from a position that'll give you plenty of time to blink stalkers to react to it. You shouldn't have to worry about that at all. Same thing with this one in the main. The Phoenixes are back here. They should already be getting killed by blink stalkers. You only need them at the very edges where the Phoenix are most likely to come in from. All these cannons should have been gateways. Right now you're still on 2 gateways. That's not ideal for 17 minutes into the game. And I mean, it's in a way you're spending your money, so it's fine, but it's all being spent on pretty useless cannons. So definitely a little bit too many cannons and a little bit misplaced. The next thing is now you're in the mid game. You should know how many probes you want to stop at, and you also need to know the implications of that worker count. So this game, you decide to stop at 57 probes. You pretty much cut probes at 57 about a minute or 2 ago, which is fine. All right, there's nothing wrong with stopping probes at 57 in PvP, but you need to understand that that's a relatively low probe count. It'd be nice if you can see about what your opponent's doing with workers, because if you have less probes than your opponent, then you want to engage them. If you have more probes, you want the game to draw out, because what will happen is you should both hit max at roughly the same time. Right now we can see that you're actually going to be 30 food behind right now, and that's just because of an insane number of cannons being built. Right, you built 15 cannons. That's 30 food right there. So if you didn't build those cannons, you beat the same number of food. You're going to hit max at roughly the same time as your opponent, but because you have less probes, you'll have a larger army. But it also means as time goes on, their bank will increase faster than yours will. So if you just wait forever, they'll have a lot more saved up money and bit of remax. Right? So you want to max out, and then you want to engage when you have the army advantage, but before they can really have this huge bank develop them to reinforce it. So you want to engage basically as soon as you max out. The other thing I like is generally in PvP, I like single forge with faster Archons, because armor upgrades are not super helpful in Zealot Colossi Archon battles, because the main damage dealers are Archons and Colossi, and their damage is so high, right? It's 19 per hit, or the Archons are going to be 43 per hit per biological. So knocking one off of that takes away only 5% of the Colossi damage away, or only even like 2% of the Archon damage away. So the attack upgrades are much more important. But against an opponent opening Phoenixes, I don't at all mind going double forward, just because armor upgrades are super efficient versus air units, because Phoenixes only do 5 damage per hit to armor target. So I'm not going to complain about that at all against the Phoenix opening. So now we're going to get to the late game engagements. Let's just fast forward this a tiny bit till we get to the battle. I think it should happen pretty soon here. And the one thing is, again, in the description plate that was sent, there was a comment about the fact that Sadid thought that he lost this game because he was too hasty to make the engagement. Oops, let me back this up a bit now. And one thing is, I want to point out that that's actually exactly the opposite. So you're at a situation where you just recently maxed out, your opponent's been maxed for a little bit, they have a large bankroll, and if you look at here, he's got substantially more economy than you. This means that you need to engage him now, because right now, go to army value, you've got a big army value. That means you should win the engagement, all else being equal. So you want to engage now. You do not want to delay the engagement. You want to be hasty in it. So that's not why this game went south. This game is maybe you're slightly behind from building too many cannons, and of course the early game macro could have been better, but your opponent's early game macro could have been better as well. So you're not really, I wouldn't say you're behind significantly in this game right now, because you also have an upgrade advantage. You're 3-3, and of course because your opponent went Phoenix and went to Mass Colossi, they're 3-2-1, and 3-3 is slightly better than 3-2-1. I mean, not huge, but if you attacked a hair earlier, in fact, it would have been 3-3 versus 2-2-1, because he actually just recently got a third attack upgrade. You've been 3-3 for a while, so I would say even attacking a hair earlier would have been beneficial. But as we get to this engagement, because you have less army, you do want to engage. But the problem here is, let's actually take a look at this in slow motion. The engagement is kind of an improvised one because you didn't see him ahead of time, so you don't really know what's going on here. And it's fine, right? If you just run to his army, you know you want to engage. Yes, it's not ideal that 2 of your Colossi aren't shooting, right? But his Colossi, they're all shooting, but they're kind of bunched up, which means one micro thing you could do is you could select all your Colossi and you could stutter something forward, which means you come down here, you right-click down, and then you attack move. You right-click down, attack move. And as you get closer between each stutter step, you can start, instead of attack moving, right-click the middle of their Colossi, and it'll get some great laser shots off. And this can work because your army size is overall larger. So if you look at this, let's look at units. You have slightly less Zealots, but you have a lot more Archons, and you have all these Stalkers. So you have a lot more meat in front, so you don't really need to attack his meat stuff because there's not that much of it anyway, right? He's only got a few Zealots, those will not pretty quick to your Archons. So this is where you can use your Colossi to prioritize against his Colossi, and that'd be totally fine. So, I mean, the positioning isn't ideal, but it's not ideal for either. You both have roughly equally poor positioning. And the fact is you want to engage right now, so this is a great engagement. But the one thing that's super, super important is you don't have a pylon with your army. In PvP, always have a pylon with your army. In PvT, always have a pylon with your army. In PvZ, always have a pylon with your army. So it's like the most important thing ever in the battle. You can take a look at great micro or great positioning. You might boost your efficiency by 20 to 30%, right? But you know what? You probably have, let's say, 12, 13 gateways here. You should. Here's 8. Maybe you've got, let's say, well, even 8, all right? You should have a few more, but let's say you have 8 gateways. 8 Zealots boost your army efficiency by so much, because all of a sudden your Zealots and Colossi aren't going to die. In fact, right now, all these gateways aren't being warped in. The instant you lost a single unit, so it should have been even 5 seconds ago, you should have been warping in 8 Zealots here. Prioritize that over any type of micro. You got to keep constant reinforcements. It's the most important thing to do in the battle. Always have a pylon with your army, and then constantly warp in reinforcements, because that's more important than almost any micro you can do. Of course, your opponent's making a mistake on that too, so it's not a big deal. But as we jump forward a little bit, we're going to take a look at this battle. And one thing we noticed, neither you nor your opponent are warping in units. Right? Finally, red is warping in some Zealots down here. Right? So this is about 20 seconds late, but it's still better late than never. And these Zealots are going to be immensely helpful to him. And as you notice, because you had a greater army value, you actually just crushed his army. So if you pause it right here, I mean, you escaped the battle with 7 Colossus. That's a game over. You've won the game. Except you actually haven't, because you've been forgetting to warp in units, and so now you're going to lose all these Colossus to the Zealot warping into Phoenixes. But right now, you should have been, 8 Stalkers pushing away the Phoenixes, and then the Colossi could also jump behind the Stalkers, and you wouldn't have lost any of these Colossi. Instead, you're losing, I think, 2. You might even lose a 3rd. Well, actually, now you actually warped in all Zealots. So, I mean, your warping was better late than never, but it was all Zealots and not Stalkers, so you're going to continue to lose more Colossi here. Anyways, the idea is, the engagement was at the perfect timing. I mean, maybe it could have been, if anything, it should have been earlier. So the idea that you were too hasty is not true at all. But the most important thing in the battle is to prioritize that, you got to prioritize that warping. So you got to have a pylon with the army, you got to prioritize the warping. If you do those 2 things, that game would have been won easily. So of course, early game macro could always be improved. That would have even won the game before it got to that point. Mid-game decisions, less cannons, faster additional gateways. But most importantly, in those late-game engagements, you always want to have a pylon. You always want to warp in reinforcements the first instant you drop below 200 food. So we're going to take a quick break, then we're going to get on to a Terran replay.